Well, good evening or morning, depending on where from IFL Nation you are tuning in. I want to welcome you aboard to the weekly show of the wagers. This is recapping the week that was, the week that is to come, and all the other goings on of this great league. A beautiful night. Granted, it's midnight here, but burning some midnight oil on a special edition of Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thanks again for tuning in and taking the time from your busy day. For those of you who are new to the IFL or the channel, welcome aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game, a passion that I have channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14 member teams specifically. We've got up-to-date team rosters, game previews, game recaps, a whole host of other analysis on the forum. Definitely worth checking out. There you will also find the written version of my Wager Wednesday posts, and the URL for that is in the description. So definitely check it out if you are interested at all in learning more about the IFL. With that, it is time to venture into week 6 of the 2025 season. Hard to believe that we are already 5 weeks into this thing. So week 5 was a bit of a lighter slate. We had 4 games compared to the 7 games that we had for week 4. But let me assure you, there was no shortage of action. We had 4 amazing matchups here, one of which featured an undefeated team that is undefeated no more. We had championship caliber teams rounding out into form, along with the team out in the West getting their first win of the young season. So we will go over those 4 games in greater detail in just a few seconds here. We'll recap those along with our year-to-date results so far and see where everything stacks up in terms of how teams are doing against the spread, on the money line, and on that over-under implied point total. We'll try to see if we can spot any abnormalities and or sources of value there to form our plan of attack for attacking the 6-game Week 6 slate. We've got 4 games on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. As always, we will analyze each of those games in detail and make our selections. And then to wrap up tonight, we'll try to make a 3-game parlay to see if we can get our 3rd parlay hit of the season. So stick around for that. Our results in week 5 were a dead even split of 2 wins and 2 losses. We'll start off our game recaps here with the Massachusetts Pirates and the Jacksonville Sharks, who were taking the field on Saturday night as the UNF Ospreys in honor of the local university in Jacksonville, about 15 minutes from the arena. But this night belonged to the Pirates. The Sharks got off to a pretty decent start early on, but the Pirates were right there with them every step of the way. Turning point of the game was a second quarter interception by Marcus Floyd that he returned for a touchdown, shifting the full weight and momentum in that game in favor of the Pirates. The Sharks made a great contested effort to try to tie up the game. They eventually earned themselves an opportunity to recover an onside kick. Unfortunately for them, it did not pan out, and their undefeated season bid has come to a close. The Pirates getting a second consecutive win against a previously unbeaten team, that by a final score of 42-35. So our pick of Jacksonville minus 218 yielded no return as the Pirates burn us for a second consecutive week. The Pirates right back at 2-2 after a worrisome 0-2 start. Are they firmly back in conversation as a bona fide playoff contender? We will see. We had another game at 8 o'clock on Saturday between the Bay Area Panthers and the Fishers Freight, a non-conference collision and a great test for both teams. This was Bay Area's first game on the road, along with Fishers' first all-time meeting with the Bay Area Panthers, the champions of 2023. And this night, even though the Bay Area Panther defense gave up a few more points than they are probably accustomed to, they more than made up for that with the key plays that they made defensively. In particular, 5 interceptions of Freight quarterback Keegan Shoemaker, 3 of which were by the same guy, Tyler Watson, who took one of those interceptions all the way for a touchdown and nearly had a second pick six early in the game as well. It was just too many mistakes for Fishers to overcome on a night where Bay Area finally got the offense with Joshua Jones, Josh Tomas firing on all cylinders. An unusually high-scoring game for a game of this caliber that had this distinctive a Dixie Wooten footprint. But in the end, the Panthers get the better of their former co-head coach with a 57-41 win. It is the 3rd straight win for the Panthers, the 2nd straight loss for the Freight, as both of those teams look to remain among the top 4 in their respective conferences. Our other 8 o'clock game involved the San Antonio Gunslingers and the Tulsa Oilers doing battle for the second time this season after the Oilers won the Week 1 matchup in San Antonio 28-20, looking to make it 2 in a row against the Gunslingers from Alamotown. And this game saw a lot go right for Tulsa early, and that kind of set the tone the rest of the way. 4 possessions for the Oilers on offense resulted in 4 touchdowns, and they had a stretch of time defensively from about the beginning of the second quarter to about midway through the third quarter, where they just held San Antonio completely in check. Malik Henry struggled mightily. The Gunslingers tried to get a little bit of momentum shuffling the deck and giving Guy Myers a shot at the quarterback spot. And while he did have some pretty interesting plays, including a 41-yard break and tackle run for a touchdown, ultimately it wasn't enough to really stage a furious effort at a comeback bid. So the Oilers, who are the last team in the IFL to get its home opener, make that wait worthwhile. They defeat San Antonio 45-31. We narrowly miss the over-under by a touchdown. Stinks to lose those over-unders when you have an over at a little bit smaller of a number than average, but that's how this one panned out. So that brought our weekly record to 1-2, and our hopes relied on the Tucson Sugar Skulls, winless on the season up to this point, going to Northern Arizona to face the Wranglers, who were also winless, in a game that would see one of those teams power their way to win number 1. This was a really good game, really good first half that saw the Wranglers rally from a double-digit deficit, and they got the game tied at the half, 24 all. But that was really the high point for the Northern Arizona Wranglers in this one. A lot of offensive struggles again, trying to string together that full 60-minute effort, as Tucson was able to completely shut them out in that second half. And obviously that paved the way for Jorge Reyna, the new quarterback, to do just enough to get Tucson over the hump. That second half run was 20-0 in favor of the Sugar Skulls. Tucson ends up winning that game 44-24 to get themselves out of the cellar of the Western Conference. And believe it or not, just half a game behind third place in an unusually competitive Western Conference, but not in the way that you might imagine. So those were our 4 games. And down below are our results so far for each bet type. The one that sticks out like a sore thumb there, 0-5 somehow on betting favorites on the money line. It's just been a rough stretch. Can't dwell on the past, though. We got a power forward. See if we can pick out some of those favorites that do make sense, that maybe aren't super, super obvious, because we will have those later down the line. But all we can do is keep trying and see if we can get that record to kind of even out a little bit. Aside from that, for the most part, we're doing really, really well. We're sitting with a record of 13-12 so far. A lot of that is buoyed by a ridiculous 9-3 record at correctly picking the point totals. So we'll have to see if we can keep that up, or if that kind of regresses a little bit back to closer to 500. But it'll make for a very fun next month or so here. And we'll see where we wind up with each progressing week. Whoops. So our parlay. Last week, we got 2 of 3 legs correct. The downside for us is that one leg that was wrong was the leg that has hit 15 of the last 20 times. We had gone with the Panthers and the Freight to stay under 79.5. And kind of like what happened last week with Fisher's game against Massachusetts, just way too many first half points to really have any realistic shot of that holding on for us. By the time we got to halftime of Bay Area Fishers, there were 66 points scored, so only 2 touchdowns in the second half were needed to get that by. Obviously, the Panthers and Freight obliterated that total. They got up to 98 points in total, with the game ending 57-41 in favor of the Panthers. So no luck for us on week 5, but we still have a lot of green legs there in that sequence. 11 of them out of 15, to be exact. So as long as we're able to continue picking our winners here with that level of efficiency, we should have more success in grabbing a few more parlay hits here later on in the season. Our weekly results to date. Thanks to an unusual divvying up of the money last week, we had put a heavier amount on the Sharks, who lost, and a smaller amount on the Sugar Skulls, who won. So with the flat method kind of inverting that a little bit, it is the flat method that is actually ahead of the weighted method up to this point in the season, with that difference being just over a unit. The flat method above net zero, the weighted method below net zero, just goes to show the overall variability and how confidence can play a factor, both positive and negative, if you are to weight your bets based on a level of confidence. ROI, pretty much same exact deal. And we're getting to the point now where we'll want to bank wins a little bit more quickly and frequently if we want to see that ROI climb up to new heights. Our yearly results. So a little bit to discuss here. Nothing crazy statistically significant. Underdogs still hold a slight 13-12 advantage in covering the spread. Entering this season, that had historically been at around a 57-58% rate. So the yearly sample of 2025 is a little bit smaller than what we've seen before. The important thing to remember about that, though, is up until this point in the season, we've only seen single-digit point spreads, which really kind of shifts things back in favor of the favorites, generally speaking. Particularly when we have point spreads, as we've seen a lot of this year, where the spread is only 1.5, 2.5 points that one team is giving the other on the handicap. So that makes it very, very difficult for underdogs to not win the game, but still somehow manage to cover. Not impossible, but in some cases, you only have 1 or 2 points of wiggle room to work with. Road teams have kind of quelled the home turf advantage so far. 14 wins out of the 25 games. Not really much to be said there, aside from kind of randomness and variability accounting for most of that. The one to talk about, though, is the money line results. In particular, the underdog at 40% efficiency, which at surface level doesn't look like a whole lot. But if you compare it to 2023 and 2024 results put together, that is an improvement, and a pretty significant one, over the historic 34-35% that underdogs had been converting at before. So is there some value to potentially be tapped into here? The early results thus far in 2025 indicate yes, and it's something that we should look to incorporate a little bit more with our single game bets going forward. Obviously proceeding with caution, but seeing where we can find value in teams that might be undervalued in certain matchups. So that'll be a fun little challenge to try to hit with a little bit of repeatability here. And then the over-unders. Unders still have a pretty significant advantage. The average game now sits with an over-under of 82.5, so that has become our new metric compared to the 83.5 that we had used a week ago. And it's right around that 82.5 number where we see the proportion of games that either make the over or make the under balance out a little bit. So that'll be something to continually keep an eye on as well. We had mentioned it in weeks before. That philosophy does not change now. And we have a few perfect records left in terms of teams' performance against the spread, with the over, with the under. You see some of the notable highlights there, and we'll get to each team in just a little bit. So like we said, a bunch of perfect streaks here on the line. Arizona and Northern Arizona in particular is going to be a very interesting game with those two teams competing against one another on Saturday night, with the Rattlers perfect straight up and to the over. Northern Arizona winless thus far on the season and perfect to the under. So at least one of those streaks, as far as over-under, is going to get broken with this game. We'll have to see as well about the money line as well, though it should go without saying Northern Arizona has a very, very big test in front of them in that one. Quad City has got some perfection on the line too, as the only team left undefeated against the spread, along with 4-0, the best record in the IFL. We'll see if those results continue here against the Jacksonville Sharks, who ride a 4-0 under record into Moline on Saturday night. The other team of note, the Iowa Barnstormers, all 3 games of theirs have gone over so far, and all 3 have been losses. Is that a trend that continues in their game against Fishers? And here are our team-by-team betting results. We have 4 teams with 3 wins on the season, 3 winning slips, which are the Panthers, Wranglers, Blizzard, and Steamwheelers. The Steamwheelers, again, were our number 1 team in terms of record and profit last season. We do have a few teams at 1-3 that we could improve upon. The Tulsa Oilers, along with the Gunslingers and the Pirates. I am so sorry, Ralph. But yeah, we'll continue to monitor this, see which teams that we're doing really well with, some that we might be struggling with, and see if we can adjust our methodology based on those early results to make sure that nobody gets too far behind in our overall goal of trying to get to 7 wins for all 14 teams across the board. Now it is time for the weekly disclaimer section. The lines and odds that we're going to be using today are going to come from DraftKings. FanDuel is typically what I've been using to fill in any blanks along the way. Tonight we'll use strictly DraftKings though. This is a entertainment product only. It's not meant to be any sort of advice per se on betting. There's no such things as locks in the sports wagering world. And it's really meant to be a fun hobby, and it should be kept as such. If you want to try your luck and tail my bets, follow along, you're more than welcome to do so, but please practice safe gaming habits, gamble responsibly. You have to be 21 or older to play in most jurisdictions. If you or a loved one is having problems with gaming addictions, things like that, there's a lot of resources that you can refer to online to seek help and counseling in that matter. Haveagameplan.org is the example that I've had down below. That is one of many great resources that you can consult and use for that topic. And with that, we've got a half dozen games there, all fantastic looking matchups. Let's dive in and make some picks here. Starting with tomorrow's opener at 7:05, that is Eastern time. The Vegas Nighthawks traveling to San Antonio to play the Guns. The hosts are getting a 1.5 with the over-under 81.5. The money line is pretty even. Vegas at minus 115 and San Antonio at minus 105. Now Vegas, they're coming off a bye, and they're coming into this game knowing full well that they've kind of left some meat on the bone with the start to their season. Both offense and defense having their own sets of struggles. Jerome Johnson and the offense haven't cracked 30 points in either of their last two games, even though a lot of fans know of the immense upside that any offense led by the reigning IFL MVP has. Combined with a great supporting cast of Antonio Wimbush, Tamori and Terry, Quentin Randolph, among others, it just seems like time is what's going to heal this Vegas Nighthawk team. And they have a great bounce back opportunity here against a gunslinger team that so far has their fans scratching their heads due to inconsistency really across the board, in particular at the quarterback position. The big news coming out of San Antonio this week was the release of Malik Henry, who had been the starting quarterback in each of the past 3 games, or 4 games, I should say, for the Gunslingers. So Malik Henry out, former Iowa Barnstormer Zach Reeder in, and it is Reeder who will compete with Guy Myers for that starting quarterback job come Saturday night. My pick here, I thought long and hard about this, because this is really about whether you believe in the team's upside or you believe in the body of work that the team has put in up to this point in the season. I look at a team like San Antonio. I see they're 1-3. Their backs are firmly pinned against the wall here. And what they've been able to do, despite having problems with that signal caller on offense, have played a considerably harder schedule than has Vegas to this point. And they've gotten pretty similar results in terms of point differential. And their defense, even though they've had some moving parts over the first month plus of the season, has still shown that they can make impact plays. Ulrich Jones, back from short-term IR, absolutely helps. Guys like Clifton Duck coming in and making plays, especially near the end of that Tulsa game. You need players like that who can, just out of nowhere, flip the game directly on its head. So we had talked about underdogs on the money line before, trying to pick those out a little bit. I really like this opportunity here with San Antonio as a buy low candidate. In a perfect world, I would like this to be even money, but we'll gladly sacrifice the nickel and try for this outright win here. There's a reason why the spread is so close. This one's just going to be a matter of which team makes the most positive plays at the most critical moments. If we can get a good day from Zach Reeder or Guy Myers, whoever winds up starting, particularly in the running game, where San Antonio has an opportunity to improve the most, to strike more of a balance with that offense. At that point, you can unleash guys like Khalil Rashad, Austin Upshaw, Naquan Murray. So both offenses could really pop off here. We'll see what happens. But in the end, my pick is San Antonio at minus 105, getting back into the win column in front of their home fans. First home game in over a month for the Gunslingers. I think they feed off that. One of two 8:05 games will feature the Fisher's Freight and the Iowa Barnstormers, both carrying multi-game losing streaks into this one. The Freight roll in, and they're laying 4.5 with the over-under of 83.5. Fisher's minus 175 money line, and Iowa plus 145. This will be the first time that these two rivals have done battle against each other in series history. And we still don't know much about the quarterback situation for Fishers. Jaya Wright had really impressed in the first two games of the season, both wins. But then he got replaced in that Massachusetts game by Keegan Shoemaker. And then Shoemaker went into the Bay Area game and threw 5 interceptions, which really set them back in that 57-41 defeat. Is it a matter of the Freight going back to Wright, assuming that he's fully healthy? Or will the Freight ride it out with Shoemaker, who in that game against Bay Area showed that he can make plays with his feet as well? That was one of the bigger storylines when I watched the game last Saturday. I was impressed with the way that Shoemaker was running the offense, aside from his struggles as a passer. But yeah, it's an opportunity for a bounce back for Fishers against an Iowa team that hasn't really been there throughout the season. There have been flashes of upside, particularly with the offense with Joaquin Collazo III and Keon Williams, along with Keyshawn Taylor, who's built himself up as a really nice secondary option in that passing game for the Barnstormers. But their struggles still reside on the defensive side of the ball. They have given up at least 50 points in each of those 3 losses to start off the season. So it's going to take a pretty good effort to stop the Freight from continuing that trend. My pick for this one, I thought about the over given how hot both teams have been in that certain bet type. I wound up pivoting instead to Fisher's minus 175. And I know on a good day, Fishers should cover this spread. But I've just been scarred way too many times by Iowa coming up with a touchdown and a backdoor cover. It seems like at least 3 or 4 games in the past year plus where I've gone against Iowa on the spread, they've managed to backdoor cover on me. So no way I can reasonably trust that bet right now. So we are going to trust Fishers despite our 0-5 favorite money line record to this point. We're going to see if they can get it done against the team at the bottom of the Eastern Conference at the moment. There's always the danger of that trap game narrative playing out. But given where the Freight have lost 2 straight, I think the sense of urgency will be there to prevent that from happening. So give me the Freight outright. Minus 175 is not as steep of a price as I thought it was going to be. So we will take it. Our other 8:05 game, these are the top two teams in the Eastern Conference right now. The Jacksonville Sharks going to moneyline to play the Quad City Steamwheelers, who are giving 2 in the hook with the over-under, the lowest of the week at 76.5. On the money line, Jacksonville is plus money at 105, and Quad City is laying a quarter. And the story, the big one about this game is the long laundry list of injuries that the Sharks come into this game with. In particular, 2 of their 3 highly touted running backs have been placed on short-term injured reserve. Jimmy Robinson, who got dinged up in the Tucson Sugar Skulls game a little while ago, and Tyler King, who just took an absolute beating on multiple occasions in last week's loss against the Pirates. Both are expected to be okay and return shortly within the next few coming weeks. But all of a sudden, that 3-headed monster at the running back position for the Sharks, at the moment, is just down to 1. But it's a very interesting one that is. It is Eddie Vander, who last season suited up for these Quad City Steamwheelers. I'm smelling a hashtag revenge game narrative playing out in front of our very eyes. And it's going to be spectacular to watch. As far as receivers go, Jacksonville is still operating pretty much at full strength, with K'Ron Ashley, Jaden Stoshak, and Marcus Rogers forming a really reliable trio of pass-catching options for Caleb Barker, who is trying to get himself back on the saddle after a reasonably good start to the season. The Sharks also boasting a top 3 defense that can rival Quad City's unit in that regard. While the Steamwheelers offense boasts Daquan Neal, who is an early MVP candidate, along with impact players like Jared Ware Jr. and Davion Sampson. So this game is going to have a whole lot of star power, both ends of the ball. And this was I'll say this was the pick that I had the biggest issue with in terms of really feeling confident about it. I was a bit surprised by the point total that this game was set at, and it really made me question which direction I wanted to go. The option that I ended up taking here is the over at 76.5, which seems like suicide a little bit, right? It's Jacksonville as a top 3 defense, Quad City as a top 3 defense. The Sharks are going to be playing at less than full strength. What gives with this decision? The answer, the one that I can come up with, lies in the fact of basically playing for averages here. What I mean by that is that the average IFL game this season has seen a combined 79 points scored. So if we can get to even that number, we get something like 45 to 34, let's say. That's enough to get the job done. We also have the possibility for huge plays, whether it's, 25-yard touchdown run or pick six or big kick return that gives us short fields. Those are things that we can usually play for when picking an over-under set this low. Where I just think from a game flow and a tempo standpoint, this is the pick that makes the most sense to me. It's not my favorite pick of the week, but I believe it's the one that will get the job done. 40 to 37 even would be perfectly fine. So give me the Sharks and the Steamwheelers to do enough offensively to get us past that 11 touchdown threshold. Our final game of Saturday night we'll see a battle in the Sun Devil State, the Northern Arizona Wranglers, and the Arizona Rattlers. It is here where we have our first double-digit spread of the season, with Northern Arizona getting 15 in the hook. The over-under for this game is 84.5. We do have money line offerings. This was a departure from what DraftKings did or did not offer before. But if you wanted to try your luck with the Wranglers on the money line, they are paying plus 350, so 7-2. And Arizona at minus 455. And this is really a battle of two opposites. You have one of the most offensively efficient teams in Arizona going up against the team with the most struggles offensively in Northern Arizona. The Rattlers have put up 50 plus in each of their first three games. The Wranglers haven't even cracked 30 in any of their three games to this point. It should be noted that the Wranglers have activated Ramon Atkins from the RTR list. So it's possible that he could be the starter over CJ Fowler in this game. Or maybe it's a situation like we had in Massachusetts where the team activates a veteran and they're kind of like the steadying voice, that veteran presence to kind of help the youngster along. Regardless of who steps in under center, though, for the visitors, this is a daunting matchup either way. I know the Rattlers' defense has not been particularly great in the past two games, giving up 47 to the Blizzard, 55 to San Antonio a couple of weeks ago. But I view this game as that prime get back at it, bounce back game for that unit. To me, I really didn't put much thought into this pick. This is a situation to me where the correct answer is probably going to be the simple answer. And that pick is laying the 15.5 and backing Arizona for a big win. From a number standpoint, you can't come up with a more convincing argument than the one that kind of fuels this pick. The Rattlers, per 10 possessions, are basically plus 2 touchdowns. The Wranglers, per 10 possessions, minus 2 touchdowns. So if we get kind of like that average game playing out, if you do the math, Arizona should win this game by somewhere around 20 to 27 points. And Kevin Guy teams are not known for letting their foot off the gas, even when they have a huge lead late in the game. This is going to be a no-nonsense type of game for Arizona. They're fresh off a bye. And it could be a very long night in store for Northern Arizona. We will see, though. There is a lot of room for the Wranglers to maybe surprise. After all, San Antonio did go in 2 weeks ago and take a 14-0 lead over the Rattlers in Glendale before things fell apart. But yeah, this is one of my more confident picks of the week. I was expecting this to be somewhere around like 17, 18 and a half. So to get it at 15 and a half is reasonably good. So that is what I'm going to go with to cap off Saturday. And for Sunday, a doubleheader. Game 1 is in Lowell, with the Green Bay Blizzard and Massachusetts Pirates doing battle for the first time since last August's Eastern Conference Final. The Blizzard enter in 2.5-point favorites with the over-under 83.5. Green Bay laying a quarter on the money line and the Pirates plus a nickel. I cannot wait for this game to play out. Most notably, because of all the off-the-field stuff that has happened since the Pirates went into Green Bay and beat the Blizzard to punch their ticket to the IFL Championship. Obviously, these two teams hated each other from the very beginning. But now it gets super serious when Kathleen Trankler, the owner of the Blizzard, goes out and calls the Pirates thugs and cockroaches. Nobody is going to respond well to any of that. I'm expecting a lot of in between the whistle physicality. I'm expecting after the whistle physicality. Multiple players could get ejected. Fans might get ejected. Who knows? Just saying, but getting around. But all of that joking aside, this is going to be a great game between two teams that are even in the standings right now. This game's going to go a long way into forging what that mid-season playoff picture is going to look like. When I looked into Green Bay's season a little bit more, they look very much like the San Antonio Gunslingers of 2024 early on. That Max Myler offense has been among the most efficient and high-scoring offenses in the entire IFL so far. But the defense has really struggled mightily. They gave up 51 to the Rattlers. They've given up 68 to the Oilers, despite that game actually being a win for them. But it adds up to Green Bay games so far this season being extremely high scoring. And the Pirates offense has kicked it into gear too. Both of their wins featuring Kenji Behar at quarterback, they've averaged 46 points per game in that 2-game span. So I am leaping at this opportunity to take the over at 83.5. I think we can very easily clear this total and maybe flirt with the century mark. The only thing that might work against us is if the game kind of has a more slower, methodical tempo. Like if the Pirates prioritize clock-killing drives and playing stout defense. But Green Bay is going to come out swinging. And the Pirates are probably going to follow suit as well. Honestly, this has my vote for game of the week. I know Jacksonville Quad City features the two top teams in the East right now, but this game also has to be in the consideration for most hyped up game of the week. I, in particular, will be hyping up the offense of this game with my pick of the over of 83.5 for the Blizzard and the Pirates to kick off Sunday. And the second game of the doubleheader will take place a little bit later in the evening at 10:05 Eastern with the Sugar Skulls and the Strike Force, a battle of 1-2 Western Conference teams. With the Strike Force slaying 4.5 to the visitors. The over-under is 80.5. The Sugar Skulls plus 145 money line, and San Diego minus 175. Start off our talk with this one of the Sugar Skulls. Should be expected that they will carry the same starting quarterback from last week to this week, which is the first time all season that they will be projected to do that, with Jorge Reyna leading the charge with an offense that also features Devontae Sapp-Lynch, along with Trip Harrington, who was acquired last week in a trade with the Arizona Rattlers, who can play wide receiver as well as quarterback. So that gives offensive-minded head coach Billy Back kind of a joker's wild in terms of how he wants to utilize Harrington on given down sets and sub packages. But yeah, that Sugar Skull offense with those additional reinforcements showed some life in their 44-24 win over in Northern Arizona last week. Granted, the result wasn't fully perfect, but they didn't need to be, as it is their defense that has kind of been the backbone of what they want to accomplish so far. Since giving up 56 points against Arizona in the season opener, they only gave up 28 to Jacksonville, and they only gave up 24 to Northern Arizona. They are playing very, very good defense right now, especially with Digimon Brooks at the linebacker spot. And that projects as a really good matchup against San Diego, honestly. The Strike Force off a bye, and they've had their fair share of struggles offensively too. Nate Davis, Usually really good quarterback. Just hasn't kicked it into full gear that we've seen his offenses run with in the past. Certainly a lot of talented receivers there, with former Pirate Dallas Daniels among the most notable. And a defense that is trying to round back to form as well, to what they had in the 2024 season as well. They got a couple key takeaways in their last previous win over the Nighthawks. They're looking to continue that with this game. This should be a fun one. Sugar Skulls and Strike Force games have offered up some instant classics in each of the past 2 years, and I'm expecting this one to be no different. My pick is actually the Sugar Skulls at plus 4.5. In digging around with some of the numbers, I found that the Sugar Skulls have been slightly more efficient in net scoring difference per 10 possessions across the board. It's very close, though. But I think it's close enough to where tossing the dart on Tucson at plus more than a field goal is a worthwhile play. Not to mention that in this series, it has actually been the road team that has outright won each game since 2023. So for those who are looking for trends to continue, that would be my recommended pick here for the Sugar Skulls to put up a fight in Front Wave Arena against the Strike Force on Sunday night, with a win very, very much in play. All right, so we've spent quite a bit of time here discussing each game in detail. Now it is time to craft the 3-leg parlay of the week. I'm going to start things off with the Fishers Iowa game, and it is here that I will put the over at 83.5 to kind of kick things off here. I had initially shown hesitancy in making this my single game pick, but I have no problem at all making it my starting point of this parlay to see what happens. Iowa's 3-0 to the over and project to be a perfect team in terms of reliably getting overs to cash. It's a defense that has largely struggled, along with an offense that has shown an ability to score points while chasing games. Meanwhile, for the Freight, their past 2 games have totaled 98 and 97 points respectively. So until their defense kind of rounds out to form, we kind of have to assume that both of these teams are going to be comfortable with trading points with each other. Most of my models had this projected at the low 90s. So this is also pretty terrific value, getting this at 83.5 to kick off the parlay. My second leg involves Jacksonville and Quad City. And we are going to go with the Steam Wheelers on the money line, minus 125. I've learned many things about betting the IFL in the past 2+ years. One of the most impactful lessons is do not fade Quad City at home. Just don't do it. They are a different animal at Vibrant Arena. At their best, they can take down any team in the IFL. They did so last year with wins over each of the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. They've already beaten Green Bay in this building earlier this season. And Jacksonville, this is a tough bounce back spot. It really is. It's a road game against a team with the best record in the IFL. And it's not like you're completely at full strength either. So that is going to be the second leg of my parlay, with Quad City getting the job done outright and advancing their record to 5-0. And the third leg, I had some tough time deciding on this one. I ended up deciding to leave Green Bay and Mass out of this one. As much as I wanted to have a potential parlay, being able to sweat it out in person, I could not resist the allure of the pick that I'm about to show you right now. And that is Tucson, San Diego, under at 80.5. I know this is a low number, but there is a reason for it. When talking about unders in the IFL, the teams that I mention most often are usually Bay Area and Jacksonville. Tucson deserves to be within that same realm as well. Dating back to the midway point of the 2024 season up to present, of their past 11 games, 10 have gone under. And the only one that missed was only 1.5 above the implied total. Tucson's a type of team that you can't really sleep on, particularly with the type of defensive upside that they have shown, to where it's absolutely feasible that neither of these teams get to 40. This could be a battle of who gets the most takeaways between the two defenses and who gets the most stops as well. So it's a smaller number, sure, but I do like the chances of it being held below that number. So under 80.5 in Tucson, San Diego will wrap up my 3-leg parlay. And if I put the typical $10 wager in there, if all 3 legs hit, we get a cool 65.60 in return. So once again, that 3-leg parlay, Fishers at Iowa over 83.5, Jacksonville at Quad City, Steamwheelers to come out of that one with the win, and in Tucson, San Diego, for the Skulls and the Strike Force to keep it under 80.5. Basically operating at plus 550. We will see if this parlay is the one that holds up as our third winner of the season. And with that, that is going to wrap up this week's edition of Wager Wednesday. I want to thank you so much again for showing interest and previewing this upcoming week's games with me, which start off tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific time. For those of you who are trying your luck at the sportsbooks this week, I wish you the best of luck. I will see you at the cashier. Have a great night.